We'll call today's meeting in order. First thing we have in the agenda is approval of the agenda. There is an agenda addition. I'd like to add that right after item number 2.
Mr. Chair, I move approval with the addition.
We have a motion to approve the agenda with addition.
I'll second that.
A second. Any discussion, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any citizens to be heard that are not on the agenda? No citizen. Hearing none, we go on to approval of payment of bills.
Move to pay the bills, Mr. Chair.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? Not, call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we're going on to 8:35. We got Brian Green to talk about armor. I'm glad to see we finally found out what armor stands for.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, no, Brian Vattel, Red River Dispatch.
Hey, Brian.
Good morning.
Good to see you again.
Yep. He's gonna
Great.
show us his wisdom.
Take it all.
So basically, the slideshow that I'm going to present today is kind of an overview of the armor system itself, how it started, where it got, and then at the end is probably details you want to look at, how much it's going to cost, and then our kind of a timetable. So some of the stuff I'm going to go over pretty quick because we did it last night at Dover City Council, and it lasted a half an hour, so we'll try to get this a little bit faster today. Okay. Armor System Radio Matrix for Emergency Responders. Basically, that's what the Armor System stands for. And again, it's a partnership with the state of Minnesota. Some of the reasons why they changed the armor, the nation was running out of frequencies to meet the demand of our people. FCC announced changes in frequencies. And most governments used VHF frequencies for agency communications throughout the United States. Narrowband. We had to split the VHF from a 25 kilohertz to 12 kilohertz. Basically, that was mandated by FCC and had to be done by 2012. You remember back in 2010, we applied for a federal fire grant because all the fire and EMS radios could not be narrowbanded. For law enforcement, we were digital. We did get that grant, and they did get new radios to be compliant to that narrowbanding. Some other stuff. Again, there will be a requirement coming up in 2018, 2020, I believe, by FCC where VHF again's got to get more narrowbanded, down to a 6.25. Basically, the effects of narrowbanding, you get reduced coverage. If you go to a 6.25 and you have a wideband, it's basically a brick. So we had problems, the state of Minnesota did. Again, the current system, VHF, we're subject to narrowband with limited sites, limited coverage. No roaming within the state of Minnesota, basically we don't have it now. Limited integration within the armor system. Again, some of the stuff about armor, Allied Radio Matrix for Emergency Response. Just Project 25 standard-based system. Brian, maybe you could explain a little bit what Project 25 is.
Really, Project 25 is it's a national public safety communication standard. So it's a federally adopted, recognized standard for all public safety is really so hopefully everybody's on the same language, if you want to so speak.
Okay. The 700 800 megahertz radio spectrum is armor, so that is not subject to narrowbanding. So again, in 2018 or 2020, when we have to get narrowband again, we will not have to. Started in the metro area, armor did in the early 90s and 2000. Basically, the vision of all public safety in the state of Minnesota, local, regional, travel, and non-government will be on armor system. Routine access to communications infrastructure basically means that the state's going to build the towers and all the infrastructure, and we'll have access to that. Again, our day-to-day operations will be on that radio. We'll have regional operation and statewide operations. The state then divided up, the state of Minnesota divided up the state into regions. Of course, we're part of the Northwest region. I'm on the RAC board, which is an advisory board to the board itself. So is Brian, so is Tori Jacobson, and then Grant is on our board member. So basically, that's how our governments work. So anything we request or we want to change, we have to go through our Northwest Radio Board first. They approve it, and then it goes up to the State Radio Board. Okay, just some information about what others of wellness are doing. Wilkin County is already on Armor. Otter Tail's on Armor. Becker's on Armor. Monoma's on Armor. Norman is capable, Armor capability. That means they have the multi-band radios. They have Armor radios and VHF. And then Polk I think they just switched over not too long ago. They're on Armor also. So out of the 87, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Are the North Dakota counties on Armor as well?
No, they are not.
Okay.
This is the Minnesota State plan.
Okay.
And I guess maybe we have time, Brian, to kind of explain what
Okay.
North Dakota's looking at.
Okay.
Why were we, I mean, not that we're slow on it, I mean, why didn't we convert before?
Well, the problem was, they started in a metro area, and a couple slides will show that.
Okay.
Of course, they used all the state money for the metro area first. They ran out of money, went back to the legislators, asked for more money, and they divided it up in phases. And the third phase was like the outside, I believe, of the metro area, and I don't know how many
Pretty
million
much the
dollars.
northern third of the state, and simplistically, the state originally, they were funding it by phase, so kind of, which is really not a way to build a statewide project, and finally, the legislature in 2007 came to its wisdom and said, this is foolish, and so they finally funded the last three phases of 4, 5, 6, and so that's, in Clay County, I mean, to make decisions, we had, we knew the writing was on the wall way back 04, 05, and back then, even the state, you asked them, what should we do? And they said, you got to do what's best for yourself. And with the interaction with the North Dakota partners here and the ability to get funding through, grants, through the leveraging the state of North Dakota, that's where Clay County chose, as well as a lot of other counties in the Northwest all did the same thing, so around that time.
And a lot of it had to do with building the towers. We didn't have towers in Clay County until after 2011 and 2012 was when they built the towers here.
Or didn't we also have, because I served on that board, I remember going on trips with you and Greg Anderson up to, but originally when this was first coming out, didn't we have some concerns because of our shared dispatch with North Dakota that there was some communication potential differences?
Well, there is, yes.
And that was kind of where, we do a lot of things regionally, and that's kind of where, it's, what are they doing on the North Dakota side, and being that, Clay County and Moorhead, they do so much interaction with the North Dakota people, it's really didn't want to, doing something on your own would really, go against a regional initiative, so, they got together, and again, with the state of Minnesota saying, because at that time, they really didn't have a plan, they didn't know when the towers were going to be built out here. And then the 07 legislative session is really kind of what changed the tempo. And even as Brian said, it still has taken a long time from 07 to here we are in 2015, and
Right. And we were in no hurry, our system was built in 2004, so, life expectancy of that's at least 10 years, if not longer.
This whole thing developed as a result of the collapse of the bridge.
Well, no, actually,
Minneapolis,
it was
wasn't
operational when the bridge was there, but after 9/11 is when it started. But the real test was the bridge.
Yeah,
Yes,
and it still
and-
wasn't working.
Yeah, it worked.
35 Deb.
Yeah.
Is that what-
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Just some of the other state agencies, basically all the state agencies are Armor. Participation status, this is, I believe, 2 years old, so, again, like I said, 85 out of the 87 counties in Minnesota basically are on Armor now. We're one of the last. Here's the tower sites. See how many had to build? 324 of them, so it took them a long time to build out, and a lot of money. And the Armor backbone is designed to provide 95% statewide coverage. Next slide. This site's planned.
Just-
If you look at the map, basically this is, they mapped it out where you're gonna have coverage, and all the green is good coverage, blue is a little lighter coverage, and then the white basically is, you're gonna have maybe some problems where you have to have a local enhancement. We don't have any in Clay County.
So Clay County is fully covered?
Yes.
I have a question in regards to the towers.
To the what?
The towers, are you able to put receivers on existing towers, or are these towers that had to be built specifically for this?
Well, the state built these specifically for the armor system.
Okay.
But yes, it's again, it's a cooperative. We won't be putting any infrastructure on. The state will own all the infrastructure, meaning the towers, the receivers, the transmitters, everything. We'll basically getting out of the business of the infrastructure.
Just an observation on that. I was sitting here thinking what their questions would be on the number of towers.
Yep.
And this 800 megahertz has half the range that the old VHF system had. That's why they had to build so many towers.
yeah.
Yes. I don't think people understand that. Why not just use the old towers? But they need twice as many or more to cover.
Yep, correct. They're still building some towers in northeast Minnesota.
Yeah, right now the system is out of the 324, 97% complete. And really, the only delays really have to do, as Brian mentions, up in the northeast where they had some environmental issues and people didn't want to see a 330-foot tower, so they had to redesign, and they're going with shorter towers, but that means greater density. So land acquisition, and as you can imagine up in that area, with DNR and forest issues, it takes a long time. And then you deal with rock, and it's but really in our area, we're very well positioned. Everything's built.
We got the tower in Lawrence built, the tower by Comstock. Tower in Felton was built, and then we also already had the DNR tower, the state tower on Highway 10 and 32, and then they built a tower about a mile out of Barnesville in Wilton County, but again, that's an armor tower. And then we have one in Flum and one in Ada. They're outside of our county, but we'll be able to use them, so it's well covered. We talked a little bit about the business plan, and Brian mentioned the 2007, basically here's the numbers.
Excuse me, on the slide before, is Minneapolis, St. Paul involved in this, or, because that was all white?
They were the first to go with armor.
That's kind of where it started and spread out from
Okay,
there.
but that was all white in that map, so I was just wondering what,
Yeah, just because of the density, it'd just be a bunch of dots that would just look,
okay, very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Okay, remember, they started back in 2000, so now basically they're looking at getting new stuff, have a new upgrade on everything.
Yeah.
Just quickly how it works, we have talk groups now instead of channels. So we've got local, region, statewide, and tactical channels. So you go anywhere in the state of Minnesota, you can either talk regionally or statewide. Or if you have their talk group anywhere, you would be able to talk to them in that group. So it ain't going to change much. Control channel, basically, we have now like law enforcement, Clay County 1, we'll basically have that same control channel, kind of like a cell phone. That's your channel. Can link to anyone to anyone. So basically, you can stand out here in the parking lot in a portable radio, and you can talk to somebody in Rochester. I mean, it goes from tower to tower to tower to tower, and it's seamlessly and just goes like automatically. So kind of like a cell phone.
Talk just like you and I are talking.
Again, state buys the infrastructure and maintains the system. Some of the benefits of interoperability, newer equipment, not subject to narrowbanding again. There's state funding and grants available. Okay, Clay County area, many towers in or around your borders. We talked about that already. And we all have a shared common system. Basically, our primary talk groups are programmed to see Clay County towers first, and then the first ring around it. We also have regional and statewide talk groups in our radios. You'll have to think of radios nowadays, it's not, they're basically computers is what they are, they're not radios anymore. They look like a radio, but they're basically a computer. Other benefits, when we do transports out of our county, we can talk to anybody within the state. If we have an emergency or anything like that, we can either, if we have their talk group, we can talk to them, or we talk to the state, basically, seamlessly.
Is this, is there ability for engineers to tap into the same system?
You talk about county engineers? Yes. We have them in our plan, and we'll talk a little bit about it.
Okay.
Yeah, they will be, I think that's the only one, but we have placeholders for like the colleges, the high schools, or the school systems,
Transportation.
Yeah,
all
I
that
would,
stuff.
I would think that, you know, with what we can run into sometimes, severity in winters and things here, that the ability to have the engineers.
Yes.
Being able to talk from a 100-mile radius as to what's going on and what's developing would be pretty important.
And again, and one of the focuses too is kind of from a county perspective, is kind of to shed the reoccurring costs that they have in supporting their current towers, you know, so budgetarily. And the highway department, the engineers would have that same kind of issue because they're leveraging, you know, your current fixed assets. So that's why they're going to be, you know, definitely part of the plan, you know. And we've already met with Dave over there, so
Yes.
he's been apprised to this and he's on board, so.
Good, okay.
Yeah, just some of the other benefits to my end users, we have encryption, which law enforcement basically has, so the scanner land can't pick up everything we're talking. The unique ID for each radio, and that's kind of why we do preliminary numbers. The state has to know how many more radios are going to go on their system, because they assign a unique ID number to them radios. It's got an emergency button, basically. It's got a little red button top of your portable radios where you can push that button. It automatically opens up that channel. Anything that's said or heard in that room will go to dispatch. It'll hear it. The people that push the button will not hear a thing. So if we have a hostage situation or something like that, and the deputy or the officer can't talk, if he pushes that button, everything is going to go out.
They're going to hear everything.
Yes. He could be wrestling with a guy or whatever, needing assistance, and all he has to do, I mean, they're gonna hear, you know, and actually even the field units, they'll be able to hear this going on. At the same time, they can actually talk on a separate path and carry on, you know. That's currently they can't do that, you know, so that's just one feature.
How do you dial up? I mean, if I want to talk to someone in Mankato, I mean, and everybody's on these radios, everybody's on the same stuff. How do I get to Mankato? Do I dial them, or do I say I want Mankato, or what?
There's actually, again, as Brian mentioned, it's really just clicked on the radio, and that's part of training. There's groups that'll say like S means for state, so let's call it STAC 1, and it's instantly going whoever's listening to that across the state. So if Mankato's listening to that, and you'd hail, you know, Clay County to Blue Earth County on STAC 1, they go ahead, Clay County, and it'd be just like that. You know, so you just have to audibly, you know.
You have to have somebody monitoring that channel.
Right.
It's required, all dispatch centers, that they have to listen to a certain amount of channels.
Right.
The state group, some of the region groups, and then of course your local groups.
Okay.
So, to answer your question.
Yeah, thank you.
It's
Some of the other things is, you know, again, shared resource, the partnership with the state. Okay, interoperability with our neighbors, of course, we still have to talk with Fargo PD and Fargo Fire. We'll set up talk groups assigned, and we'll do a hard patch. Right now, we do a hard patch with our state patrol, so we can talk to them, but once we go to Armor, of course, they're Armor. Now, we'll reverse that, and we'll put a hard patch to Fargo PD and Fire, so we'll be seamlessly, we'll be able to talk back and forth.
Even though they're different bands,
Yeah.
frequency bands, so it's just part of the plan.
Basically, the temporary interoperability until Fargo and North Dakota figure out what they're gonna do.
Has this been a partially federal program that's dropped down to states, or has each state taken in its own initiative to do our armor?
Each state has pretty much taken it on their own, and right now, the technology is called trunking, and right now there's about 37 states that have adopted this type of technology, either a statewide or, you know, a regional. So it's just, again, it's a federal, that's where that standard comes in, kind of gives you the technology to follow, and now the states have more or less, you know, taking that, and, you know, that's where, you know, some of the initial grant funding way back when was for, and that's where, you know, like the state of Minnesota leveraged a lot of that to build armor.
Yeah, so I think the funding that the state of Minnesota uses is 911 money,
Right
so that's
now,
where it
right.
comes right now. So,
That surcharge that everybody gets on the phone
yes,
bill.
yep, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Some of the costs, the state built the background, and the local enhancement. tower capacity. We do not have to do any local enhancements, we do not have to build any towers or anything like that. A lot of counties in the beginning did. Of course, that's, you know, a pretty good price tag. No end user fee. So once we go on this, we do not have to pay any fees. The state basically said that, no, we will not. And then, of course, you know, you have a lot of naysayers say, yeah, well, you say that now, but then 5 years down the road. Well, if you look at it, 87 counties and all the metropolitan area are on this system, and now the state says, well, we have to pay user fees. I think there'll be pitchforks and it won't last so long. I don't think legislators will ever pass that.
I don't ever underestimate that.
And actually, one piece of that right now, there is some legislation going on right now to increase that 911 fee to, I believe, by 20 cents. And that's kind of what they're looking at, is to
Yeah.
build that extra, you know, cushion, you know, so they don't run into any budgeting issues to support the system, because it's continually, it's just like a computer network, you know, even in the radio, you know, the network side, it's continually undergoing upgrades, you know, so just like the computer network does, the system is, so those have some reoccurring costs, and that's where they're looking to increase that just a little bit.
Okay, participation on Armor, basically, we have to do a plan, participation plan, identify load. We've done a lot of this stuff already. And then the main thing on this is that we migrate at our own pace. Full participation plan. Again, we talked a little bit about public, or placeholders for the future public works, highway department, parks and rec, schools, and universities. We have them in there. Our next step, of course, we already did the resolution. We did that back in August or September to explore Armor. Then we obtained quotes, get done that, and then Iraq identifies a regional priority for us to do the explore the Armor. The same thing with the ECB, which is the Emergency Communication Board. We're talking about the state board. And then we turn best course of action. Okay, now we get into the meat here. This is the preliminary numbers back in February of 2015, and I do have a hard copy for each person. The first thing you look at there is the PSAP equipment.
I can kind of speak to this here,
Yep.
too. And just kind of briefly, as Brian mentioned, this is for PSAP equipment, which includes not only our dispatch console, but the connection from triple RDC to the Armor system. So we have 8 positions in our primary dispatch plus 4. So again, these are budgetary numbers. The 1.2 line item, that's really for, again, because we have to keep in mind that we're consolidated dispatch, so that's the equipment that's going to be needed to talk to our North Dakota partners. 1.3, the early indications are based upon the number of radios that would be used in Clay County. We might have to add a couple of channels on the Moorhead site. The data will get finalized, but so again, that's budgetary placeholder. 1.4 has to do again with backup and recording. Of course, and then 1.5, the radios need antennas. 1.6 includes a microwave connection. That goes into how do we connect dispatch to Armor. So, and then 1.7 is when you do project, design, there's a percentage placeholder in there for any unforeseen costs. So that's where we come up with about 1.55 million.
The state realizes, that that's always going to be your biggest cost, no matter what. And they currently they began out ECN grants where we applied directly to the state of Minnesota ECN for grants, and they've been close to that 45% is what they've been giving grants out for. So once we get to that position, we would be applying for a grant to pay for as much as we can on that part.
Can I ask a question? On 1.1, so is that kind of the main computer component piece?
Yes, that's big.
And where would that be housed?
The 8 are at triple RDC, at current dispatch in Fargo.
Okay.
And then the plus 4, that would be located at our backup location, which is in West Fargo Police Department. That's
Okay.
currently where we have our physical locations there, so.
So there's 8 of these console systems.
Eight dispatch consoles for triple RDC, plus 4 to
Right,
be
backup.
located. Yeah.
And those would move into dispatch.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. They'd replace it.
And when we say 8, those 8 are for Clay County's needs.
That is our center, you know, because you can't do partial, you know, you can't leave an old.
Right.
it's-
But how about, so if you have these new councils in there, and if Fargo and Cass County are not on Armor, what councils are they using?
It'll interface, think of us as the hub. So
Okay.
it doesn't matter the technology.
Okay, so
whether-
it'll work with both.
You're correct, you're
Okay.
correct. There's no impact there from
Okay.
the regional part.
And that's where the interoperable
The
language.
buzzword.
Yeah, the buzzword.
Exactly.
And you gotta realize dispatch was planning they had to update this no matter what. And they've been planning for the last 2 to 3 years to get enough money to be able to update it. And all this money is coming out of the, you know.
It's gonna be
coming out of
grant
dispatch.
money?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we'll apply for the grant.
Okay, but dispatch is gonna help sharing the cost.
Absolutely.
The rest will be their responsibility.
I can speak to some of that, even though our director just recently retired a little over a week ago. Triple RDC had a cash carryover in 2013 of 100,000 that we encumbered for radio console replacement. 2014, right now, again, we got we've had some cash carryover. At a minimum, we figure we're gonna be able to encumber another 100,000, possibly more, depending upon some variables of some outlaying expenses. And then also with Cass County and City of Fargo and City of West Fargo, they had passed a 911 local fee increase of 50 cents, which began on January 1st of 2015. And our director had alerted the administrators of, you know, the county and the 2 cities that we have this impending project. So we don't have a historical perspective on how much money is going to be generated, you know, let's say by the end of 2015 from them, but it's pretty much, they're on alert that we're coming for that money. So trying to keep the kind of the same percentage contribution is, you know, I'd say from triple RDC, that's our goal, you know. So if they, you know, Clay County / Moorhead don't really care where that money comes from. If it's from via the state of Minnesota via grant, doesn't matter. And our goal, you know, and I'm sure everybody's goal, is to try and purchase this console without adding, you know, doing the special assessment, is really what it comes down to. That's fundamentally it.
Any questions on that?
Very good, thank you.
Okay, the VHF fire and EMS paging, the Armor does not page, so we do have to switch our paging. Basically, we got a proposal from Mid-State Wireless for a paging upgrade. It's gonna cost the county at least around $60,000, basically. We'll be able to put stuff on the state towers to page them, but we have to go to a new paging system than what we have right now. In the other radio, you go into the radio system project cost. That project manager, basically, that's not gonna happen because Brian basically is gonna manage this project. He has managed all our other projects, so we'll have to do some licensing. That's gonna be included in there. Well, we put that money in there just because, you know, you might have to do something, but I don't.
So it's at 60, is that something you're expecting to have to come out of Clay County, or do we have grant opportunities for that as well, or?
Yes.
Well, yeah, no, I'll take that back. There's grant opportunities through a fire grant, if we do get it, so.
Okay,
And he'll speak to that a little bit later here too,
okay,
bundling.
all right, I don't want to get ahead here.
Yeah.
No problem, no problem.
Sorry.
Quite all right.
The other part of this, the total 800 mobile and portable radio equipment required for system implementation, basically is for each entity what they have to buy to be fully operational on the Armor system. So the mobiles and portables, basically what we're talking about. You see ours there, we got everybody at jail's also included in ours, and then Warren Police, Barnesville, Dilworth, and all the PDs. And then all the fire departments. Any questions on that? Again, that's an estimate. And that last page shows what all it includes in that radio. You know, you just can't buy a radio, you gotta buy all the stuff that goes with it. It all adds up in a hurry. Okay, the last slide, I have the timetable, preliminary timetable. Again, in April 2015, preliminary plan completed, which is done. May of 2015, our final plan will be finished. May or June, I'll try to get it back on the board agenda for the final approval of the plan. And then I'll bring it up, and Brian will bring it up to the Northwest Regional Emergency Communications Board, which Grant sits on, for their approval. August, September, we'll bring it up to the State Emergency Communications Board for their approval. And in November of 2015, once the state approves it, we'll at this point apply for an AFG grant. It's basically a fire grant, federal government grant. And it's for all our fire and EMS, well, I shouldn't say all, but all the volunteer fire and EMS. So we'll apply for a grant through them.
And do you apply for the grant as the whole?
Yes.
Or do they individually?
No, as a whole community, Clay
Okay.
County. But it does not include the city of Moorhead Fire.
Right.
And it does not include EMS if they're not connected to a fire department. So Sabin, I believe,
How about Barnesville?
Sabin
one of
Elmwood.
them, no, they are not.
So, but they'd be notified what they'd have to do then?
They'll, yeah. if
And
they
then
already
Holly
have them.
Hurt.
Holly Hurt. I believe they fall under there. They might
They have
fall
Holly
under.
Fire.
It's,
Yeah, maybe not.
it's the language of the
Okay.
grant.
Yeah.
Okay.
It has something to do if you're able to transport patients, and there's some
Okay.
fine,
Yeah.
but
We'll
But
leave
you have a-
everybody that we can in there
Okay.
and apply for it. I mean, we're not gonna leave anybody out by any means. And we've done, back in 2010 when we did it before, so. We'll be doing that. We'll apply for that grant, and, we do not get it, right, Brian?
and that'll include that paging equipment, that 60,000 that Kevin pointed out, so that'll all be part of the same grant application.
And the
So-
fire grant pays normally 95%, so they'll have to come up with 5%. The Dilworth Fire Department has agreed to be the administrator of the grant. So we've already, we touched the plans on that, we know who's gonna do the grant and all that good stuff, so.
Do they have the expertise in making sure it's, I mean, grants are, I mean,
Yeah, you know, the main thing for that
the way
grant,
they're worded
Yeah.
and filled out is extremely important.
it's the audit trail basically is the most important on that thing. And
I helped with the 2010 grant. Holly Fire was the fiscal agent during that one, and I have all the bridge of that grant application, so I'm gonna work with
You'll
Dilworth
assist
Fire.
Dilworth then?
Yep, the
Perfect.
Dilworth Fire will be the fiscal agent, and so we'll do the same thing, and actually this one will be easier, because it's really just adding radios, so it should be.
Excuse me just a minute, Brian?
Yeah, I'm puzzled, Mr. Chair, thank you. Why can't the 800 megahertz handle the paging system? You're going to stay on the VHF system for paging?
No.
Paging,
we'll go to system
No.
by-
okay,
It's just in the technology of the trunking system that doesn't allow for paging.
but isn't that a little puzzling in this day and age of paging's been around for so long and is utilized so much that they didn't include that technology in the system when they're developing it?
It's a little bit, it is a little bit perplexing, and in fact, they're coming out with some stuff now, but it's pretty cost prohibitive. It actually has to do with licensing, and that this digital technology, just the chip alone is like $300-400. Well, you start looking at pagers on that technology, and it just, when you start looking at $700-800 for a pager, that's really just a one-way receive-only
Right.
device. It just, there's really a breaking point, and they haven't got there yet, again, because of the licensing proprietary issues on the chip. But the one piece where you do have the advantage, right now, the paging system, and where Brian mentioned, we already have that in place basically on the North Dakota side. So we call it the hub, and there's already about a half dozen transmitters. Really, Clay County is just adding to that existing system. That's where that 60,000
Okay,
comes in.
what frequency is the paging system on then?
They are in VHF,
They are in
but they're
VHF.
actually licensed on, when Brian mentioned narrowbanding,
Yeah.
there's a couple of frequencies that were reserved by the FCC that are exempt, and we have it licensed on those. So
Okay.
we won't be subject to that, so we won't, and the pagers are actually a lot cheaper in that
Then
technology.
staying on the VHF system, which just seems confusing to me when they're moving ahead with the 800 megahertz that they could not include the paging, because paging is very important to the
It is.
fires and things, so.
It is, and like I say, there are things that are coming along that in fact, just something I heard introduced here a month ago, but it's not, in my opinion, it's not mature enough that I wouldn't be, it still would require a first responder to carry a radio. And if you talk to anybody, they hate carrying multiple devices, and they hate carrying even just a cell phone and a pager, so if they had it,
Thank you.
So-
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's pretty much wraps up 2015. So 2016, in February, March, we'll find out about grant notifications for the AFG grant. And then at that same timetable, we, as a county, will apply for the ECN grant for the PSAP equipment. We talked about that 45%. That's where we'll be applying. May of 2016, we'll know if we get the grant from ECN. Okay, so if everything goes as we planned, we get in both these grants, then the summer of 2016, we'll be starting ordering equipment for the PSAP. Of course, that's a major part of this, and that's gonna have to go first. They have to get the equipment ordered. And then by the fall of 2016, we'll start installing the PSAP equipment. And then in the fall of 2016, start ordering equipment, mobile and portables. And we go to December and January to start training personnel on Armor radio. And in 2017, if everything goes as planned, well, first quarter or sometime there, we'll be ready to switch over. Now, if we do not get the AFG grant, our plans are to reapply again, so that's gonna put a year behind for the fire and EMS. They'll reapply, and then hopefully we'll get it in the next following year. But we as law enforcement, our plans are to go forward and to be on Armor. So we'll still have the VHF system for fire and EMS, but we'll be on Armor, the fire department.
This, right,
Law
just,
enforcement.
just if, basically if the AFG grant application doesn't go
Right.
through. So interim plan is really what it comes down to.
So if you do get approved for the AFG grant, will it cover 95% of this 1.6 and then 95% of this?
No, it'll only cover the mobiles and portables and then that paging system.
Oh, okay.
For the rural fire / EMS, because AFG stands for something, a fire grant, FAFG part, so, and again, it's for rural fire /
EMS
particular EMS, so anything that quote unquote is for the rural fire, that's where the grant application will be.
And then, so then we'll just have to budget in that excess?
Which part are you talking
Yeah, I
about?
think-
Well, I guess I'm confused as to where this,
Where the money comes from.
where is this money coming
Okay,
from, or have we?
Basically, for our county, for our responsibility, for our mobiles and portable radios, basically my our sheriff's department internal service, and I'll hand this out, this is what we got. Basically, we should have enough there to cover all our
Okay.
mobile and portables
Okay.
and the paging.
Okay,
But if the paging falls under the fire grant, of course, we're gonna try to use it there, so.
absolutely. That helps, thank you.
So, Jenny, are you done?
Yes, thanks.
So basically,
Mr.
there's
Chairman.
no new money, I'm sorry, Frank.
So for the rural fire departments that we're also looking to have to go on this, is there any potential internal cost to them? I'm assuming the grant isn't 100% grant on the equipment.
AFG grant's 95,
Okay.
95%.
So- I'm assuming that you've been following up with all of these departments, voluntary, whatever the departments are, so that they're starting to plan
We've
for
been beating it
their
in head
investment?
For quite a while. So
Okay,
Some
okay.
are getting it, some are not, but
Okay.
yes.
But ultimately, once that switch is made, they really don't have too many other options, do they?
No, they do not.
So the point being is that they certainly better be making plans and preparations for their
Yes.
budgets.
Yep, and that's why we started so early, last August, basically, when we started, and we notified them as soon as possible, our Fire Chiefs Association. We were to the city of Dilworth last night, we were going to the city of Sabin. I've been to Barnesville, been to Holly. I've been to almost every one, but there's a lot more coming up that we will, basically give them the same briefing, that this is what's gonna happen.
And then I have one final question on either one of you. In terms of when we look at our deputy vehicles that are on the road constantly, what are we looking at adding in terms of equipment into those vehicles? as a result of this?
But basically be a mobile radio.
Just an additional mobile radio?
Well, we'll take out the old one, we'll put a new one.
Okay.
This would be the one.
So just be replaced?
Yes.
Okay. And the value of those radios?
Well, we'll find out when we try to sell them, but Motorola, I know we have a ton of preliminary talks about that. They would be able to buy them back. Of course, it's not going to be, but it's going to be for something.
I'm thinking more of the new ones that are going in.
Oh, the new ones.
They're a little bit more expensive than the current ones. And they, in Brian's sheet there, the first Excel spreadsheet
Okay.
shows kind of the cost per.
Okay, I can look that up.
top
That's
per. But yeah, so they're a little bit, I'd say they're maybe 15-20% more expensive than the current ones, I'd say on
And
average.
most of our deputies have their vehicles with them, don't they?
Yes.
They take them home and...
Yeah, they all
Okay.
have, yeah.
So inside storage from a standpoint of our deputy vehicles isn't a real, and I raise those questions because we're also now
Yep.
planning for
Right.
a new law enforcement center, and I know we've heard from, if we do a joint LEC with Moorhead has real concerns about their vehicles being left outside with the vast amount of dollars they have invested inside those cars. And unlike our deputies, they don't take their vehicles home. And so that's why I just wanted to raise, in case there was something else that we needed to.
From a radio perspective, the radios are very ruggedized. I mean, they're
Yeah.
meant to deal with this environment, probably more
Okay.
than some of the other, like mobile video.
More than the
PCs.
humans that have to be.
Yeah, right.
Okay, thank you.
Frank, did you have a question?
No, no,
Okay. The only thing that, I sent out the packet of information, and basically I need a resolution, or a motion, I'm sorry, from the board that all mobiles and portable radios equipment, which is the user equipment, required for system implementation to be the responsibility of each agency in Clay County.
That's your recommendation?
Yes.
I would move that recommendation.
got a motion and second to approve that resolution. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Sorry, it was a little fast, but we did it. Still took us long.
Yeah.
Brian, you're a little.
Well, it's-
It's all my fault. Put it on Brian's.
Brian's fault.
But it's a complicated deal, and I'm glad you guys are working on it. Brian, I'm glad you're back working on this. I was working with you
No problem.
10 years ago, I think, on this thing.
It's
But,
getting close to that.
yeah. So, you and Greg Anderson were doing a lot together at one time on it.
Correct, yeah, that's where it started, and this is kind of in my wheelhouse of
Yep.
my job, and and if.
Believe me, when you travel for 2 hours in a vehicle with, to go someplace,
Yeah,
you get an education.
even if you don't want it.
And then you get it again on the way home.
Captive audience, so.
That was a very, very good
Back
update.
Yeah.
to me, and
Yeah.
hopefully I'll have the final plan by then.
Thank
Well,
you.
good luck.
Yeah,
Keep working
thank
on
you.
it.
Hey,
Thanks.
Brian, as long as you're up here, can we talk about this highly pathogenic avian influenza?
Yes, let me grab
Oh.
the book, and I think Josh is there, right? Josh, Public Health.
Morning.
Hello, Josh.
Morning. Good morning.
I guess as everybody's kind of aware of what's going on, basically it's southern Minnesota, south central Minnesota, with the HPA1, they call it now, the bird, or turkey flu, bird flu. Basically, it's wiping out them facilities that have tested positive.
Right.
We had, at least yesterday, I believe it was in 9 counties in Minnesota, North Dakota and South Dakota, and it was like 19 facilities that have been tested positive where they had to depopulate everything.
Everything, correct?
Correct. We get updates Monday afternoon and Thursday afternoon. They, USDA and Minnesota Ag basically are responsible for the incident itself. Basically, they take control of it. They sent up an IMT, which is an emergency management team from southern states up to Minnesota to run this whole thing that's going on. part of, I did send out our emergency operation plan to Brian. I don't know if I sent it to you.
I think it was for.
Yeah, I think I forwarded to it. So basically outlines what our responsibilities are, any disease or animal disease outbreak, and basically this is what it is. So again, some of the briefings that they've given us is that it's, right now, they said it's just a matter of time. It's going to be here. They don't know how it's being transmitted from barn to barn or not. They believe it could be from wild animal, or not animal, but wild geese or turkeys or something like that, but they don't know, and it's just it's basically out of control right now, so hopefully they can get it under control.
Yeah, no kidding.
But
So this is more of a turkey issue, it's not with chickens and eggs?
Right now, it's.
Right now, yeah.
Okay.
Chickens have a higher tolerance for this flu than the turkeys do. The turkeys must be the weaker bird, I don't know, but that's kind of what they're going from there. But now some of these turkey facilities that have tested positive within that have chicken, also chickens there, and then also they have processing centers that are affected in there. So we have a few things that we have to take care of, we've already done. One of the main things is to make sure that we know our main producers, which we already did. They have them mapped out. You have a quarantine zone, help me out here, Josh. Quarantine zone, quarantine zone, a control zone, and then a monitoring zone. So if we do, let's hope not, get tested positive here in Clay County, we're going to have to set up that zone, map it out. USDA and Minnesota Department of Ag is going to send in a lot of people. And then we have to basically support them. Our responsibility is going to be, we might have to partially open up our EOC to manage some of that stuff.
What was that? What did you, open up what?
Emergency operations
Oh,
centers.
okay.
Some of the counties already are doing it, but it will only have to be partial. It won't like be a big flood or anything like that.
And our thought there was we'd use the new Department of Operations Center and Public Health Wing, second floor wing now that's.
Yes, we will not be using the facility up there unless it gets really,
It
really
should
big.
suffice for this type of event.
Wayne, just a minute, Wayne.
Brian, when these turkeys are destroyed, I think I asked you this earlier, could you explain how they are disposed of after they've been destroyed?
Right, what they do is how they depopulate them. Again, the USDA and Minnesota Department of Ag will bring in, there's a foaming product they call it, it's a foam basically is what it is. They bring in the product and the equipment to be able to spray the whole barns to depopulate them. We have to supply, some of the farms, what happens is that it's a lot of water, it takes a lot of water. And a lot of the farms down in southern Minnesota ran out of water, so in our emergency operation plan, we have a fire department deliver water out there. Well, we're kind of in a fire zone right now, so we might not be that. So we identified basically other people that can bring water out there. So we bring water out there, they spray the foam on it, depopulates them. They basically put them in windrows within the barn. They leave them in the barn. They put them in windrows, and then every 2 or 3 days they'll turn that windrow. They decompose by the heat of the body of the animals. So within 3 to 4 weeks, it's pretty much decomposed. They'll test, make sure that the disease is not there anymore, but that heat will also get rid of that disease. And then they basically load them up and spread them out as fertilizer.
And the virus is gone.
Yes.
They test for
Thank you.
it.
Yep, they're testing.
Thank you.
We do have to set up like a drop point. So if we think one of our producers has a problem and they need to get the birds, we set up a drop point. USDA will come pick up that bird, bring it to St. Paul, get it tested. The state will test it first, come back positive, then they have to send it to Iowa to have the federal government say, yeah, it's a positive. So it takes a little process. They have not told me, in our plan, we have NDSU as one of the national labs, and I've asked them several times, well, if we have it up here, why can't we go to NDSU, use it there, and they've not given me an answer yet, so instead of going 4 hours, instead of, 2 hours like they have it down there.
From the time that the virus is found in a, we'll call it a farmstead where they raise these, from the time that's found, how long of a process is it before they can get back in business again?
Well, that's a good question.
Don't know. They have to, once the barn's clean, they have to contaminate or decontaminate that barn too, so they don't know yet.
I mean,
There's a lot of unanswered questions.
there's a lot of turkey farmers in Minnesota.
You know?
There's a lot not too far from here. that
We
would
have
be
3 in
really-
Clay County, I believe, according
Correct, yes, we do have 3, and then of course you have your backyard ones.
Sure.
But you would have
As far as the,
a severe impact to the.
Yes.
as far as the public health side of things, obviously Brian and I are working very closely together on this. But our specific involvement, we've been in communication with MDH, and they're kind of holding their own conferences and calls, keeping us up to date on what's going on. But we'd be certainly concerned about the individuals involved that might be exposed, whether it's a backyard flock if there was an exposure there, or whether it was in a facility. We have our monitoring protocols and things we would be following up on and taking care of and working with the appropriate.
But to this point, we have not seen where it's transferred from
No.
bird to human.
Yes, it has not happened yet.
Is this just specifically a Minnesota issue right now?
No,
Is it?
they headed California. Arizona, I believe a little bit, but California, they had a pretty big outbreak there. Well, now we got North Dakota and South Dakota.
Right.
They're assuming the birds are using the fly.
Mississippi fly zone, I believe the word's
Right.
coming.
transmitted.
And are they, if there is identified a turkey operation that has chickens as well, is the operator disposing of both herds, chickens and turkeys?
If you're in the quarantine zone, yes.
Okay,
But if you're not, then, you can, and it goes, the first quarantine zone is 3 kilometers, right?
Kilometers.
Kilometers. Why they don't use English, but 3 kilometers, so it's about 1.5 miles.
Okay,
from
so
the
then-
affected farm.
so that growers that have multiple sites are not
Necessarily affected if they're not in that
necessarily
zone.
having to
Yeah.
dispose of every
Right.
site.
Yeah, if we talk about Bears facilities, they've got facilities throughout Clay County, and there's a lot of them, so.
And don't they also have some lakes near their barns? Would that be something you could pump from the lake, the water? If you
They
talk
have
about,
to- They have to, yeah, yes.
Oh, they did?
They have to have clean water.
Clean-
We've got to mix with that foaming. I
Okay.
mean, it doesn't have to be potable water, but it's,
Right.
so we have to find a water source, so basically we're looking at Holly and City of Glendon, if we, if that area out there, that we'd have to get water to have to transport that out there.
okay.
Dave's been notified, I've talked to him a little bit, over both county engineering, just, kind of an idea if we need his help and stuff like that. So,
Well, thanks for
signage and
keeping us
stuff.
updated.
Yeah, no problem. Good.
Thank you.
Good.
Frank, did you have another question? Guess not. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
And with that, we'll go on to Dave.
I'm not sure.
Is this the first time we made you wait? Good one, Frank.
How long did it take you to think of that one?
Well, dang, I wish I would have thought.
Sorry about that, Dave.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may, I had to step up for a moment. I'd like to ask, does this virus affect wild turkeys because they're everywhere around here? We've had them in our yard. Anything on that yet
I
or
don't
not?
know, but I know the turkey season opens up here like on the 15th, but they have not said anything about wild
All right.
turkeys yet.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, I'll get rolling here as I got quite a few items on the docket
Yes,
here.
you do.
First item is to approve our credit card company change for various departments. We got this approved, I guess it was last fall. We were looking at changing our current vendor, which is County Gateway, to a company called Swerve Pay. The Swerve Pay company didn't integrate very well with the county's online permitting software company, which is RT Vision. and there was just too many security issues and things that we just couldn't quite get that relationship to merge together. So in talking with Polk County, they're using a company called Variable Payment Systems, or VPS. Their integration is complete as of about a month ago, and they're doing everything to online taxes, and they're doing some things that we aren't doing currently, but it's also online permitting for highway department. I believe it's also recorder work, and potentially our situation might be even impound type payments for like the sheriff's department. So I guess I would like to continue this integration service, this change, I guess, to the VPS company. The current there's quite a bit of paperwork that comes with this thing. We've got a service agreement, we've got a WorldPay submitter agreement, as well as an ACH addendum. So there's 3 things that need to be kind of approved, and for some reason, we weren't quite on the same page with the VPS people, as they've only got the highway department listed on the service agreement. But I guess if it would be possible, I think it would be nice, if the board chooses to do so, to basically approve moving forward with the whole county in general, so we don't, because Diane is here, and I think she's okay with moving first with the highway department at this time, but I guess she really she's got a lot of items that they take online payments for. They will provide a swiper just like at any convenience store and things, so that equipment gets provided to the county for free. But I guess, I think, so the contract that I've got to be signed today, I gave to Vicki, only has the highway department listed on there in the service agreement, but he said that there will be additional calls made and then another contract set up, I guess, for the other departments. So I guess I would like to move forward as a county in general, if we could. And I'll talk to this Matt Bernstein from VPS and see if there's a way that maybe we can just have them change the current service agreement and move forward with only one agreement, but for one reason or another, you put only the highway department on there.
I have a question in regards to leaving Swerve Pay to go to this other. Is there any sort of fee for discontinuing the contract early?
No, we never actually, we had a contract set up, but we never really got moving forward with them, so it kind of got dissolved before it got started.
Have we discussed this with Lori?
Yes, Lori has reviewed it, Jenny has reviewed both both have reviewed the contract documents from VPS. And, I think they feel comfortable. It's kind of nice, another county so close that does business very similar. Like when I got the online permitting stuff put together with RT Vision, I basically went with Polk County and kind of followed their lead on it. So I feel like a lot of the bugs, these integration bugs, the one thing that was looking like it was going to happen was when we were going to integrate Swerve Pay with RT Vision, it was potentially going to cost us like $9,000. And I guess in our mind, from Diane and I, we were just going from County Gateway to another credit card vendor, but for some reason there had to be all kinds of development work that was like to the tune of $9,000, and we just couldn't quite swallow that. VPS has agreed to pay their integration fees are less for some reason, but they're covering those costs on their end. So there's very little, if any, cost to the county for doing this, and I don't think there's any cost for making this switch, which is nice.
I'll move to approve item 1.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Now I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Item number 2, I guess.
Item number 2, I would like to request the current change of our administrative assistant, which is it's a variable hour position at a 0.5 level in my current budget. I took a good look at the work that this position is doing for the highway department, and I worked with our office manager, Mandy Olson, and we took a look at some of the things that just aren't getting done. And I guess for several years now, as the permitting program for the highway department's grown to a level of, I think we're budgeting annually $72,000 a year of revenue coming in from the sale of permits. There's just so much moving permits going on. There's so many trans systems. We sell about $12,000 worth of a 6-7 axle permit to trans systems, so those big green trucks can haul the beets into Moorhead. There's a lot of work that the admin assistant that does on a 4-hour per day basis that she can no longer, at a 0.5, it just doesn't seem like it kind of gets it all done.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
does this go through Highway Tracking Committee and it's been okayed?
Yes.
So move.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to go to a full-time position on administrative assistant. Any further discussion? Not, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
I just want to say one thing, in taking a look at the additional dollars that this will, will need, initially, I think I might have told the highway committee it was like around 26,000, and that was, if we started January 1st, but being that we're already into this thing about the first quarter, it's actually closer to about $15,000 of additional funding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back off 3 line items on our maintenance side, traffic signs, and then 2 maintenance budgets, $5,000 each. So it does have a net impact of 0 to my budget. It's not an increase, so.
For 2015.
Correct, 15, yep.
One thing I forgot to bring up on the discussion there was, did you check with Darren as far as, does it have to be posted or anything like that, or?
We're going to do an internal post for the required 7 days countywide.
Okay,
So we're going to open it up internally.
Okay.
thank you. Okay, we'll go to item number 3.
Item number 3 is approval of our construction bids. We opened those bids and discussed them at our Highway Tracking Committee meeting. 2 of the 3 bids came in extremely underneath our engineer's estimate. We did do an alternative bid type of a process. Well, we did not get any concrete bids. We only got asphalt bids. The one bid that came in a little high was the bridge approach work on the County Road 11 bridge. At the time when we designed this, we assumed we were going to have concrete bids, so what that project basically is removing fill material that's continued to settle, adding a foam and putting concrete back in there as the road is concrete. The price on that's quite a bit higher than we estimated because we don't have a concrete contractor on board. So, but we took a look at the rest of the bids in kind of a cumulative look on things, and I think we're about $350,000 under in one of the bids and $450 in another. The concrete work for the approach is like about $125,000 high, but I think in general, in taking a look at things, our estimate's probably on the low side. Had we known we were going to go into it with just bituminous contractors, we probably would have had quite a bit, as far as, especially mobilization, because if you're going to mobilize a concrete contractor in there for the road work, he's already going to be there. I think we had $10,000 shown for mobilization. Well, now to mobilize a separate new crew in, it's going to be quite a bit more. So our estimate was actually a little on the low side there, but the other 2 bids actually came in quite favorable. They are in line with our 5-year plan that we developed, last year's 5-year plan for this year. We're still on board there. So being that this is the 3rd year of our 3-year process for spending the bond funds, we're still on target with that as well. So I guess I would approve that we recommend the bids for the County 52 project to Knife River Materials in the amount of $2,920,298.53.
I'd so move.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Give the Knife River. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay.
The other projects are kind of a tied project. We've got County Road 18 and County Road 11. I don't think I have this quite. Okay. The way we put the bid together, we had those working days in there. Those aren't a pay item, but they're more for a bid item. So I'm trying to see if the paperwork I have here has that included.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Dave, are you on item number 4?
3.
Item number 3.
Item 3.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Take a real quick look here at this bid. Okay, so the amount to be approved for the County Road 18 or the SAP 14-618-15 is $3,285,172.79, and that is from Central Specialties out of Alexandria. Now, that number is less than what we read during the bid opening because it takes out those working day numbers that are for bidding only. So the 3.285,172.79 is the contract that we will draft up with them if approved by the board.
And that is under bid, or under estimate,
Yes, yep,
by quite a bit.
quite a bit. Well, I think it was about 350,000.
Okay. I'd move approval of the low bid.
I'll second that.
Discussion, Brian?
Well, Mr. Chair, I was going to say, I think we discussed at highway tracking possibly and at the bid that you were going to include those estimates that you would pay out. That's why you've included a little extra in there, other than the base bid, yeah.
Correct.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to go with Central Specialties. And is that the $3,285,172?
Yep, and that's for the 18
79.
project. And then the last tied piece would be the County Road 11. If we want to add that to the motion too, the County Road 11 work for the bridge approach is $269,112.18.
I would include that in my motion.
I would as well in my second.
Okay. Okay, then we got the two projects, the bridge approach and for County 18.
Correct.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried.
All right. The last item I have, I think there's two items on the agenda, but the very last item is a amendment with Parish Contracting. And as I looked at this agreement with the city of Barnesville, I don't think we need that addendum. And I talked to Jenny a little bit, or we emailed back and forth, and I think she agrees. That addendum was put together with one of the very first agreements we had with the city of Dilworth, because we forgot some language that could have been included in the agreement that basically says the contractor is only going to get so much money that we are getting passed through from the cities. We're not going to be obligated to pay them any additional funds other than what they're paying us or they're receiving. The additional funds, they need to cover their own. So what I did is I took a look at the agreement and I added a couple of sentences in there that describe that. So the last item I have would be an agreement between the county and the city of Barnesville for their Safe Routes to School grant. And basically it lays out some responsibilities. There's county responsibilities, which would be to oversee the project, make the payments, and then request the federal aid payments from the Federal Highway Department through MnDOT. And what I put in there was if these payments are not getting back to us in a timely manner, being that we're front-ending this thing, that they will pay us and we would reimburse the city back. And also if there's funds that do not come in, the city needs to make those payments to the contractor. So the city's responsibilities are to obviously reimburse the county as needed based on the payments. They're going to provide all the contract administration and construction observation. That's always been the city's responsibilities, as well as they need to reimburse us for any unanticipated expenses incurred, which to this point I don't think there's ever been there. We've worked with Dilworth 3 times in the city of Hawley, and I do a little bit of oversight, but I don't do a bunch of work for them, so I typically don't charge them. We don't have staff working, it's pretty much just my time, so.
So we're really just overseeing this project, as far as funds, we're not going to be held liable for the funds. Barnesville.
Correct, yeah, we don't do any of the engineering. They've got a consultant that does their engineering for them. And we just pretty much make sure they follow the rules. And there's it's called the delegated contract process, which is the new federal aid program, I guess, for the federal funding. So I just make sure they're following the DCP process. I grab all the paperwork, the estimates, the bonds and things, put them all in a box in case it gets audited. And we just kind of oversee it, I guess, for the most part. It's not a lot of time on our end, and we've done it about 4 times now, so I'm kind of getting used to the system.
Okay. Have a motion, anything to?
I'll move to approve.
We have a motion to approve the overseeing of this contract.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried.
Thank you,
Hey,
Dave.
Mr. Chairman, I just one note for future reference here, and I guess it's kind of slipped by me here today, but the item that we had on consent agenda that dealt with the 2015 equipment purchase, I think I've stated this numerous times in the past that I don't like to seek equipment purchased on consent. When we're spending significant dollars, I think it should be a regular agenda item. This did go through the committee and it did meet approval. We've already approved the consent agenda this time, but I really would hope in the future that none of those items show up on consent.
Did it make sense what the item was? It was already approved by the board once, but then the model number all of a sudden becomes unavailable.
Right.
And Mr. Chair and Commissioner Campbell, that's why we agreed to go consent, because you'd already approved the purchase. It was just a different model number on it. So it wasn't spending any additional dollars on
But
it. So we'll certainly pay
The,
close
the,
attention to
the
that.
problem with it is the general public reading the little bit of agenda
Doesn't
that they
understand
see
all that. Yeah,
can
good point.
have the impression that we did
Yeah.
spend significant money on consent.
Sure.
All right. Thank you, Dave.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks, Dave.
Dave, you gonna be in your office today yet, or? I know it was the Hitterdall mayor would like to,
Okay,
I don't know if you can give him a call or whatever.
sure. I've got all that stuff ready for them too. I've got some testing things in place. We go check that water line.
Very good. That's what he's concerned about, yeah, very good.
Did you
Thanks,
wanna
Dave.
Ride and get her to Holly or?
No, I gotta go somewhere afterwards,
Okay.
but thank you.
What's in Holly?
Let's discuss Highway 33.
Oh.
Tim, Nelson Prairie parcels.
So what I'd like to start with is pass out a draft resolution. I'm sorry it wasn't in your packet, it was one of those things. If you want to send 3 up that, thank you. Earlier, we talked about leasing some of the Felton land to the Minnesota DNR. We actually have that under lease now. DNR, in response, made a proposal to purchase some of that property that, as part of the Felton Prairie Stewardship Plan, was kind of intended in the future to be conserved and transferred to another agency for keeping. The 2 drawings that you got in your packet, the first one with the red and blue, that is what DNR's original proposal was, and that came to about 232 acres of property that they were interested in acquiring. Discussions at a county committee on county-owned property, discussion was, why don't we just clean that up and we'll just look at the top section of those 2 sections, which is the second drawing, and it's the outline in purple. It's the entire fractional section 31 of Hagen Township, excuse me. Anyway, so after our meeting at the county, I talked with DNR and said, well, you know, you guys proposed this, and this is what our proposal is, to be interested in selling. And they said that would be fine. What it does is it gives them a bridge from their property on the east where the old gravel mining was taking place to a whole section worth of land to the west, and also to some native land to the north. So what they need to consider going forward is a resolution from the board saying, yeah, the board is interested in the process of selling this property. It doesn't obligate us to sell it. They'll bring on an appraiser, and they'll get an appraisal that will help them determine what they can pay for it. And then we'll sit down and negotiate with them on that. One of the other things that I did talk to the DNR about was if we were going to be looking at making a sale like this, that as part of our negotiation, we want to go down to the county pit, and we want to determine exactly where the county can expand that pit, so we don't have any questions coming from the DNR anymore when our guys are starting to move some dirt down there. They're open to that, and sorting out how the county pit can expand in area. They've already given us the go-ahead that if we want to dig a hole as deep as we want, that would be fine. But it's always easier to take it from above the water if we can. So the draft resolution in front of you is really does just what the DNR needs, and that says, it says that the county would be interested in selling this property, or at least going ahead to accomplish a sale. Any negotiations would have to come back to you as the board for a final approval when and if it all gets taken care of, so. The size differential, they were interested in 232 acres. The full fractional section is 254 acres, so it's a little bit more acreage. And I know that there's always been a concern with, the county has resolved a no net gain of public land in the county. This really wouldn't be any issue there because it's currently in public ownership and it would be going to public ownership, so that shouldn't be an issue. As far as PILT payments are concerned, you know, when DNR gets it, they don't pay taxes, but they do pay payment in lieu. Given their payment schedule for this type of property, it's $1.50 an acre, that they would be paying about $380 a year on that fractional section.
But Tim, can I, the more land that they acquire, doesn't the price that they pay for PILT go down because they only have so many dollars in PILT payments?
I guess I'm not sure, but I do know that there's legislation in the hopper right now to up the PILT payment to $2 an acre.
No, that would be
So,
Then my one other question that I would have, Jenny, is, you know, we own this property now and we're looking at selling it to another government entity. Where does the ability to the public fit in on this? What if somebody from the public wanted to bid on this land? You know, you could look at it from a standpoint that it would get it back on the real tax rolls too. So what are our obligations there?
There's very specific statute on this type of tax forfeit land going to another public entity. And so we'd have to follow that procedure, but it does not open up the possibility for public sale. So we would just follow the statute, which is the appraisal process. But I see your concern, but there is no procedure provided for that within the statute.
So we don't have a choice as to opening it up to the public market?
I believe as a county, we could choose to do that separate from any sale or proposed sale to DNR.
Right.
But we haven't, we could have done that at any time since we've owned this property.
Sure, yeah.
And we haven't done that, so we'd have to weigh those options and see if it was within our, or in our interests to start those two processes at the same time.
Did the land committee, did you guys talk about that at all?
We did talk about it, and I guess what I had taken from when we had our commissioner meeting is that if we're gonna get rid of it, we wanted to get it back on the tax rolls, is what I felt was a general consensus.
I guess that's my question too.
And I think, and I don't know because I'm not entirely knowledgeable on the characteristics of this property, but in the bit of discussion that I've had, we had a Felton Prairie Stewardship meeting before Commissioner Everett had left, because he was kind of the board member that sat on that entity for quite some time. But it was that this particular parcel or parcels of land were so environmentally fragile that we weren't interested in putting it up for public sale. Because I think it was the calcareous fens.
There's calcareous fens to the west of these properties, but whatever you do on these properties impacts those fens. And you know, the whole idea of the Felton, these two Felton pieces of property was the fact that they harbor such pristine native prairie, some of the finest in the state, if not the country. And as much or as nice as putting them back on the tax rolls may be, and I did talk with Nancy downstairs, and we might look at $1,200 to $1,400 worth of taxes, you know, on
Per year.
per year. The nature of the property, putting it into the public ownership, removes all protections.
So there's no stipulations on what the DNR says can be done with this property when the next owner owns that? Say it's a general member of the public, that goes away or it stays?
The protection of the prairie goes away.
Oh.
Wayne?
I'll move the proposed resolution.
I guess I continue to have some more questions about it, so.
I do too.
Well,
Okay. I guess my question would be, if DNR does an appraisal, and it comes back low, whatever, do we still have the option then, or, I mean, can we still go later and say, okay, we don't like the appraisal or thing, we're just gonna open it up to the public? Or is that too late to do that then, or? Kevin, you got any thoughts?
I don't think that this resolution is committing the board to anything. It's just looking at the possibility of selling it. I guess if we're looking at opening it up to the public, I think there needs to be a whole lot more discussion on this. And then, even if DNR is not looking to acquire it, DNR has got to be at the table to let us know what the impact would be for putting this in public hands. We have a quarter section of land just north of here that was all native prairie. It was a private ownership, and I won't go into who owns it, but anyway, they didn't like the restrictions that the native prairie, the fact that native prairie was there, put on their usage, so they went out and they turned the whole quarter section. Once it was turned.
Well, I think the key question here is does that section of land have limitations? And I've heard the answer today, no, that it does not have limitations. So if it has no limitations, then it would seem to me that it would be, and I'm speaking by myself, it would be in my best interest to allow not only the DNR the ability to try to purchase this property if we indeed want to sell it, but for also the general public to buy it. They might find good uses for it, and you know, if we're getting $700 in PILT a year and we're getting $1,400 from the taxpayer a year, I like the $1,400. You know?
Just for channel information, PILT payments are payment in lieu of taxes.
Right.
So, Brian, you have?
Well, I did. In our discussion on this, in fact, at our land management meeting, we did discuss that commissioners would have a concern of putting this up for public auction. Now, was this the parcel, though, that we acquired, the county acquired in about 1935 or something like that?
We acquired it in 1945. It was tax forfeit property at the time. We actually went to the state to acquire it. We asked them if we could acquire the property for use as gravel, and they did issue a conditional deed that was stipulating it had to be used for gravel mining.
Right, and we could not liquidate it. Now, recent legislation opened that up and allowed for the sale of this land. And
That's
that was
correct.
this particular parcel that we're talking about. And the one other thing that, I guess if you are going to act on this, we also talked in committee that a highway would want a easement on that property for the roadway, and I think DNR needs to be aware of that, and I don't know if you talked to them about that easement or not, but access would be needed.
Yeah, I
There
can
are
see
gravel
that.
trucks, right?
Yeah, that was my next question. That it looks like there's a road going right through that
Right,
property.
yep, and we talked about that in committee, that we would want to retain that accessibility if that was sold, so, or to whomever it's sold.
Commissioner Gross?
Yes.
That's correct, about the deed restrictions. We had deed restrictions on this parcel that with recent statute that was passed, now those deed restrictions are removed.
Removed, so
And
it's
so
open.
this is now property that can be sold. As I understand it, you know, we hadn't been interested in selling it, or there had been no discussions, and it was the DNR that approached us. So I think that's how this all started. It wasn't us thinking about how we can get rid of this piece of property, but rather being approached by DNR because of the environmental value to them of this land.
We have not really given much credence to it, I mean, even during the Felton Prairie Stewardship Plan study, because of the deed restrictions that were there. It really didn't give us an option to do anything with
So
it.
these deed restrictions, these are the ones that just went off now because
They've
of
gone away.
Correct. When we first acquired the property, the deed restriction was that it was only to be used by us for gravel mining.
Okay.
And we maintained that restriction for all those years until the legislation passed that said any tax forfeit property that was transferred to a municipality with deed restrictions, now those deed restrictions were removed and the counties could maintain them in fee or sell them.
And also, just for the rest of the board's information, we had talked about what part to maybe offer for sale, if any. And the reason we're doing the northern is because we're continuing to make use of that pit on the southern side.
You know, in dealing with the DNR, there's a lot of times when we have agreed to the sale of land, and in some cases it's been private land purchased over to the DNR, but even that process still required it to come to our board for approval. And in a lot of cases, we've done that. Clay County, along with a lot of other rural counties in the state of Minnesota, passed the ordinance that I think it was either Tim or Brian talked about, where we wanted no net loss in our lands. And we did that for a purpose, and that purpose being was that we wanted to assure that there would be tax-paying land available in our county to help fund our county. And because PILT does not do to the county what the land being in the private sector would. It seems to me that, and again, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. It seems to me that if we've got a parcel of land that has no restrictions to it, that we should offer that to any willing buyer in the county. That would include the DNR. They could still bid on it, just like a farmer who might be up there living 4 or 5 miles away might like to bid on it. If there were issues with that land where it's marginal land, or if it was really an environmental issue, that would be another story. But the fact that the DNR itself says there are no restrictions on it, to me it says it's no different than a piece of land here in Oakport Township that could go up for sale.
If I might, when you say no restrictions, I'm not sure, I don't understand exactly what you're saying.
Well, you said there were no restrictions on the land. Does it?
There are environmental issues on the land.
Okay.
There are threatened and endangered species that live on the land and over the land. That's the reason why the DNR would like to acquire it,
Okay.
to ensure that they're maintained.
Okay, but if a private citizen buys it, do they have to abide by those rules?
They're supposed to. What you can do at night to circumvent those is amazing.
Well, what you
But
have
it's-
to do is be
there
legal.
are things there that, yes, even a private owner is not supposed to impact those endangered species,
But
do anything to their detriment.
back to Kevin's comment, are there going to be any restrictions on it? I mean, if we put this up for sale, are there going to be any restrictions on the new owner?
That
If it's
is
a
why I
private.
said if it's gonna get put up for public auction, you need to have DNR sitting at the table to tell you what those restrictions might be, because I don't know.
How could DNR put restrictions on it if they don't own the land?
DNR can tell you what the National Environmental, was it NEPA? National Environmental Protection Act would say relative to threatened and endangered species on the property.
I mean, I'm not trying to take away the environmental thing, you know, I'm just saying, are we gonna have to put restrictions on it when we put it up for sale, you know?
I also think it's important to note that this isn't necessarily tillable ground, and then this is not gonna be a field of sugar beets. I mean, this is,
No,
this is
the
ground
reason-
that is
the reason
pasture
why-
land, hay
The
land.
reason why DNR likes this piece of property is it is one of the finest pieces of dry prairie in the state, and it's dry prairie because the water falls on it and it goes right through the underlying gravel resource. So,
I can agree it's a good piece of property for the DNR, I'll agree with that, but just to restrict it to DNR, I feel, I have a problem with that, you know, just, I mean, if we're gonna put a piece of property up for sale in the county, shouldn't everybody in the county be, or out of the county, be eligible to bid on it, you know? And I know we have a motion, and this motion that we have in front of us for this resolution
Well, Mr.
doesn't...
Chair,
re-
let's get a second first before we go
Right,
on.
I mean, I'm just going to describe the motion. It's just, it doesn't really ask anything, really, that we're going to do anything, who we're going to sell it to, or who is going to be the, as far as I can read it. Is that right, Tim?
that's the way I read it, and I gave it to Jenny, and I don't think it commits the county board to anything.
It just says that we will put it up, describe up for fair market value.
I believe it was just in response to the DNR wanting direction from our commission before they go through the process of having it appraised, and they don't want to do that if we're not serious about selling it.
Yeah, right.
But if I understood what was said, is there would be an appraisal done to determine if it's within their price range.
Pursuant to the statute, before we could sell to the DNR, there has to be an appraisal process.
And would the appraisal process follow the process that is typically done where it has to deal with the best use of the land?
That I don't know. I'm not sure.
Because we run into that in other areas of, like, for example, when we're dealing with highway issues and easement issues, is that the appraisal, because we oftentimes end up with a really high appraisal because they appraise it at the highest and best use. Well, will the DNR appraise this at the highest and best use? Or will they appraise it as subcategory land, marginal lands? That,
I'm not sure.
that those are issues that, again, it's how you appraise something. And if it was my land and I'm selling it, I want it sold as the highest and best available, provided that it meets the zoning regulations of the county.
Is there a sunset on those PILT payments? Are they?
Well, they're not guaranteed.
Mr. Chair, those PILT payments are determined by how much the legislature allocates to that DNR for PILT payments every year, and then Commissioner Campbell hit it right on the nose. Then they divide that PILT payment amongst the acreages that are out there. So unless they add more appropriations to them, the PILT payments go down when you add acres. Now, they are proposing, I saw that as well, going to $2, but then they'll have to appropriate the money to go along with it. They can do one thing on one side, and if they don't make the appropriations to go along with it, it means nothing.
Well, we've had this land since when?
45.
45.
Since 1945?
Correct.
I don't think we need to sell it in 2 weeks, do we?
No, there's no rush on this.
I think we have some mixed messages here, but I do think we have, county commissioners here who, I for one, if it's good land and we've got no business owning it, and the only reason we owned it before is because the restrictions said we had to own it, and those have been lifted now. Just like all other of our county properties, I think it's been the the goal of that committee to look at all of our lands and determine which should we keep and which shouldn't we keep. If there's no reason for us to own land, then it should go back to the public. And if this is one of them, then it determines, what do you do? Do you do it with the DNR, or do you do it with the general public? And I have a tendency to go with the general public.
Well, this resolution doesn't say who we have to go with. It only says, do we want to sell it, I think. I think that's what this resolution says. If I read it, it says, be resolved that it's an intent of the Clay County Board of Commission to proceed further to accomplish the sale of property owned by Clay County and legally described above for fair market value. And that the Clay County Planning Director is hereby designated to negotiate for such sale on behalf of the county, which results of set negotiations being brought back to the Clay County Board for their the final action. So it doesn't say who we're selling it to or what, other than to say that we want to sell it. I think the way I'm reading it. I don't know. Am I reading it wrong or?
Yeah, well, just one more comment on that, and Jenny could help me out on that. But normally, and I think this parcel of land is somewhat different, there's an exception there because we do have a deed on it to the county. Normally, though, tax forfeited lands are the property of the state, and the county manages that property. And this is different. This was deeded over for mining purposes and different things a long time ago. So even though it was tax forfeited land, it is a different type of property than normal tax forfeited land. Am I right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
I just want to make one comment on one of these whereases in here, and
Go for it.
It says here, whereas due to the character of the property, the current value of this parcel to the county is minimal compared to the value of the property could offer to the Department of Natural Resources. Well, that could be, but it could also offer greater value to the general public as well. It's not just the Department of Natural Resources. That's my point here. We've had this discussion, and this has gone on for years amongst us with these. Jerry Waller was also another one who really felt that these things should try to first go back into the hands of the public, if we can. So
Well,
I don't know what we want to do on it.
The
But
feeling generally was in the past, and even after the Felton Prairie Stewardship Plan was done, was that if there's a gravel resource on it, there's no reason why the county should get rid of it. Because if somewhere down the road, and there might be prairie on top, but somewhere down the road, when the value of that versus the value of the resource underneath, the curve goes, so the value underneath is worth better than the value on top.
I guess that's just where I struggle. If it's, I realize that there are some fragile prairies, but we're mining it. I mean, and I realize that we're respecting certain areas, but we can't have it both ways. We're mining this.
I don't think we haven't mined this parcel.
No.
Well,
Right, but the area.
The area,
this
you're
parcel
correct.
hasn't been.
Yep, you're correct.
Dave, are you aware of any gravel over in that other area, or are you acquainted with this? Well, you must be acquainted with the gravel pit up there, I know that.
Like Jim said, there's gravel quantities in this area. I don't exactly remember where the borings were up in the specific piece up there, but.
Right, when we talked about adding in the southeast corner, the one that DNR originally left out, they left it out for a reason, because in the Felton Prairie Stewardship Plan, it said there is aggregate resource underneath that corner, with gravel layer depths up to 75 feet. All you have to do is, walk 100 yards to the northeast, and you can see what the gravel resource is. That was one of the reasons why they left it out, because in the Felton Prairie Stewardship Plan, that was an area that was, according to the plan, should be maintained in its prairie state, and revisited 50 years down the road to see if there are resources.
And there's no resources under this north parcel.
Not in the areas that DNR originally proposed. Those areas in the Felton Prairie Stewardship Plan were listed in the conserve these, maybe transfer ownership to DNR, so that the county didn't have to deal with them.
I think that the portion of the parcel that has mineral issues or gravel issues or gravel supplies for us far exceeds the value of selling that portion of land. We're looking, if you look closely around the state of Minnesota, the gravel resources are drying up incredibly in many parts of the state, and they're having to travel farther and farther and farther to get that material. My first and foremost concern is if there's gravel that's there that could be mined by Clay County for Clay County, we should not sell that portion of land whatsoever. If there is a portion of that land that does not meet that gravel ability, then that is the land we should be talking about. We should parcel it off and we should sell it, whether it's to the DNR or to the public, but I think the public should have as much right to try to buy that land as the DNR. That is my stance on it.
That would take us back to DNR's original proposal, because they originally proposed land and in the stewardship plan, from the borings and everything else, reflected that there was little, if any, marketable resource.
Even in that bottom section there, they say, now you're saying DNR said there is not?
Just in
Well, no, what I'm saying is,
It's down here.
what
down,
DNR originally
further down,
proposed.
further down, okay.
The DNR originally proposed that they were interested in purchasing. They proposed that because from the stewardship plan and the borings that were done, it indicated that there was no marketable gravel resource
In that piece.
in those areas.
Okay.
Everything else that the county owns there, you know, there's millions of dollars worth of aggregate resource there.
And then we need to
If it
keep
could all-
those.
And we-
If it could be
Tim,
done.
where are those fins specifically located? Are they,
If you look to the west, there's a couple of them that are located, there's one down in here, and then there's one right up in here.
on,
They're on DNR land,
okay,
but the FEMs need a constant hydraulic flow.
Okay.
That keeps them alive. The water flows in, it's a very calcified water. And that's one of the reasons that mining upstream of them is an issue, because you interrupt their water source and they will die.
okay. So there's none specifically on this
There's
232
none-
acres?
None on our property that we've ever been made aware of.
There's just the water source for them?
Now, can we take this back to your land management committee and figure this out?
The county-owned property?
Yeah. Can we take that back there and let's get a,
Some more discussion?
yeah.
That's fine.
I would only encourage the first and foremost thing to look at is let's protect our gravel resources.
Right.
That's extremely important. The rest then it just becomes as to, we don't need it. Who's going to give us the best price and who's going to be paying the most taxes in the future on it? Makes sense to me. 'Cause
Okay, I do have a motion on the floor. Either we gotta withdraw the motion or we're gonna have to get a second on
I would rather see a die of lack of a second.
it. Okay, very good. We'll table this then. Okay, Brian?
Just one more comment, Mr. Chair. Dave, I believe Dave was on that committee, and I believe the county also did soil borings up there for gravel.
I think it was just part of the stewardship plan.
It was just part of the stewardship plan? Okay,
We did very deep borings
right, and
for the stewardship plan.
And we can go back and discuss that more, certainly, as Commissioner Campbell has asked. But I do think that has been determined that there is not mineral underneath, that what you were looking at.
What DNR originally, yeah, what
Yes.
DNR
Yeah.
originally proposed
Yeah, that
has
little.
very little.
Because Highway was very interested in the minerals as well.
Well,
Like I said, we have millions of dollars worth of aggregate material there.
Let's designate where that is and,
Okay.
and protect that.
Now, let's find out what we wanna really sell,
Yeah.
willing to sell.
All right,
Okay,
thank you
we'll
very
table
much.
it. Thanks for the information.
Thanks, Tim.
Sorry it took so long.
Well, to get information, we don't have to apologize for that. Okay, we're into committee reports. Jenny, we'll start with you.
Can Wayne start? Sorry, I'm just blowing my...
Okay, Wayne, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. On Wednesday, April 8th, For the Ward Planning Commission, I was asked to attend a meeting of the Churches United for the Homeless at the MCOM Center regarding planning input for the 10-acre plat off 34th Street North and 3rd and 4th Avenue North. Welcome introductions, mission and strategic plan of Churches United, and then there was an introduction of 7 architects who will be involved in the process. Small group breakout to gather ideas of those present. There were group presentations, and it was very well done. No negativity at all was experienced. All ideas were presented, and each small group explained its concept for the site. Some of the things that were important were green space, parking, a park, retail development, were just a few of the ideas. And this is just the beginning process, and I believe there's another meeting coming up at the end of April. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
All right, last Tuesday I was able to go over and meet with Steve and have a tour of the juvenile facility. So unless you go in there, it's hard to kind of visualize what that encompasses. I guess I wasn't aware that we had as many schoolrooms as we do, and so I appreciate that partnership with the schools to get those kids educated. On Thursday, I was able to attend the DISC training offered by Tony through the AMC. It was fun to see where we all are on our personality profiles and get to spend some time with our department heads as well. And then I had the diversion land management meeting on Thursday where we talked about the continued ag risk study from NDSU. They were able to they found 97 sites that they are continuing to study, and so the study's going to go a little bit longer, but they felt that it was going to be more in depth. And we also talked about the budget, the Buffalo Red, and what that means as they go forward. The consensus was they were going to wait and kind of see just another month or so as they get more guidance. And then yesterday, Frank and I met with the Extension about some staffing issues. That's it.
Okay. I had, last week we had highway tracking. We've actually had 2 highway tracking committee meetings. The one last week, and we took care of one of the issues. Today was the full-time position issue that was there. We started talking about the 5-year plan. There was continued discussion about the potentially combining 2 of facilities in the eastern part into one. That would be where we'd potentially build a new highway shop out in the eastern part of the county. And then Frank might have some more to say about that. Then that same day we did meet for a couple hours with Kirk and went over a lot of the solid waste issues that are still coming up that in preparing to get ready for our SWAC committee meetings. Wednesday we had the public outreach meeting, and part of that was, again, they went over the cemetery issues that are going on there. The Corps is getting ready to release their mitigation plan for cemeteries in June. There are 11 cemeteries in that affected area, 6 in North Dakota and 5 in Minnesota. They have only received 3 of 6 rights of entry forms on these cemeteries in North Dakota. And they have received 4 of 5 rights of entries in Minnesota, and that one that it has not been received, Jenny, that has to do with that little personal, there's some
Family cemetery. Yep.
That's and I think from what I understand, it's been the issue of not being able to contact the right person who
Right caretaker, yeah. I think that's
who is
been a
considered the
problem.
caretaker of it.
Chair, can you define rights of entry?
Yeah, what they need to do is they need to have rights of entry so that they can go in, and what they're looking for is
Cultural resource.
cultural resource issues, to make sure that to find out, for example, if it needed to be listed on the National Historical Registry and those types of things.
Is there something that could occur where some of these cemeteries would literally have to be moved?
There's no indication of that at this point. There's been no indication. And then they did talk about the legislative issues. This is at the public outreach meeting. They did talk about the legislative issues that are going on in the state of North Dakota right now. They're back and forth with different bills. They had talked about wanting to start land acquisition on the first three reaches, reaches 1, 2, and 3, which is in their way northern part. And they have decided to hold off on those again as part of this whole concern with the Minnesota DNR not wanting any activity done. We did receive a report that a FEMA representative was in town and said that within the next 5 years there will be another remapping of the floodplain, and that it's very likely that the floodplain will go to what the Corps currently has, and which would result in another 19,000 homes in Fargo being added to the floodplain, and potentially as many as 800 homes in Moorhead going into the floodplain. They said that they were expecting this to be done. As a matter of fact, the word that I heard them say was they were going to be mandated to do this in 5 years. So there's some other issues that are of concern. Then on Thursday we actually had the diversion meeting itself. I got there. I got a call because I was having some work done and had to leave, and then I came back for a minute and then had to leave again. But Grant was there and he filled in for me. But the one area it was talked about was, and Jenny referred to a little bit, the issue with the Buffalo Red not supporting the budget and what that does to the overall concept, and the legal people from the Diversion Authority have basically said that the 3 North Dakota entities have their own joint powers group. And so those budget items that do not fall in with what all, so in other words, the only thing that you help me out here too, Jenny, but I think the only thing that the Buffalo Red River Watershed District approved in the budget.
There's 1.8 million.
And that was to fund the DNR ES.
The last part of the EIS.
Yes, last part of the EIS. So in other words, the Buffalo Red said nothing can be spent in any other way. Well, the North Dakota entities have formed their own joint powers group. This was done prior to this. And what they're saying then is that, okay, well, if this diversion authority won't, these projects that are solely in North Dakota, funded solely by North Dakota, would then go, our diversion authority board would adjourn, that other joint authority would meet, and they would pass what they need to do in North Dakota. So I still think that that's going to raise some eyebrows with our folks in St. Paul.
Which it should.
But at the same point, you've got the folks in Bismarck and the Attorney General in Bismarck saying that the DNR in Minnesota has no right to withhold projects in North Dakota that have no effect on Minnesota. So it's all a big legal deal right now, and that's where it's at. This thing is going to be determined not by any little county commissioner in Clay County or Fargo City commissioner. This is now going to be in the hands of higher powers, which we always knew it was going to be. So then, after all that fun, then we did have a jail construction meeting on last Friday, That was a very good meeting. We did bring in Klein McCarthy, Scott from Klein McCarthy, and we kind of went over the studies that were done from 2007, 2008, revisited and determined. And what I can tell you is that our committee did agree that they would be the right ones to help us move forward with this project. And I think Brian is working together with Klein McCarthy right now, and hopefully we're going to have something before this board in the next week or two that would authorize us to formally enter into them helping us with the design, finish the design concept of the jail and help move that process forward. And if I missed anything on that, Brian will certainly help out. And then just this morning, yesterday afternoon, it wasn't this morning, yesterday afternoon we had another highway tracking committee meeting, and that highway tracking committee meeting was basically reviewing and getting ready for the board's approval of the final 5-year plan that we do every year. And we could probably look at that coming within the next couple weeks for final approval. And Dave and Nathan have done a lot of work on that, and we think we've got it lined up pretty well. That's all I have.
Okay, as far as I too was involved in the highway tracking meeting, which we covered the variable hour to full-time position. We already covered that. 18 and 52 bids, we covered that. The 5-year construction plan, additionally what we did there, we also came up with, I think, around 20 projects to look into the future, going in from 2019 on. We looked at, okay, what's next in line after we get this done? What do we do next? So there's probably around 20 projects that we're looking at to continue the 5-year plan on. We also looked at talked a little bit about the shop down at Hawley that we're looking at trying to find some land to build there. Sunday, I went to Churches United. Wayne was talking about Churches United that he was at, and they had an open house on Sunday, and I went to that, and it's very interesting to get a different view of what Churches United does, and you get a different view if you go through the place and see what they're doing and who they're working for there. So that was very interesting. Monday, we already talked about the extension committee that Jenny and I were at. We're looking at staffing over there, and that'll be brought forth to the board in a couple of weeks possibly. Monday afternoon, highway tracking I covered. Last night I went to Cromwell Township, and they had discussions on maintenance of the roads. They felt they were doing some good jobs there, and they want to work with, see if the county can do some of the work on the township roads that they're doing on the county roads. I don't know if that's possible or not, but they liked some of the work that we were doing on the county roads, so that was good to hear. So I went to the Hitterdall City Council meeting after that, and even at Cromwell, I talked about the jail and stuff like that, and there seems to be a good reception to it, that they feel we need it. I think if we go to our meetings, I think we talk about the jail and stuff with the importance of it. I think it's very important that we bring that up and talk to them what it's all about. It's not just something we think it's a good idea right now. I mean, we need to do it because we have to do it. We don't have a choice anymore. And the same thing at the Hitterdall City meeting, they questioned the jail. Not questioned, they asked about the jail. And had along some diagrams that was handed out at our board meetings, and we went over them, and it was a good meeting there. And the other thing they discussed on was that Highway 26, I think, which Dave is going to take care of, I think, or work with him. I don't know if we'll take care of it or not. Then from there, I went to Highland Grove. They also had a township meeting last night. I went there. And they had the same thing there, maintenance of roads. They weren't quite as pleased with maintenance of the roads as Cromwell was, but we'll work with that. And I guess those were my meetings. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I guess I'd like to read a letter reference Human Services and
the State Department of Human Service. This goes to our chair, and it says, it is, dear Commissioners, it is my pleasure to commend you and your staff for perfect performance in meeting DHS Human Service financial reporting requirements for calendar 2014. All key quarterly fiscal reports for programs your county participates in were submitted to our Financial Operations Division on or before the reporting deadline and in perfect order. This effort requires submission of 32 major reports covering the 4 calendar quarters in 2014. If your county participates in a local collaborative, which we do many, submission of this report may require the collection of multiple local partners' reports for consolidations of submissions to DHS. I know this accomplishment requires planning and efficient operation and teamwork within your county Human Service Department. The result is timely revenue for your county and compliance with federal reporting for us at the state. Please congratulate your management and staff on this superb effort. And it's signed by Lucinda Jensen, the Commissioner of the State Human Service Department. And Rhonda's not here. She will be back to work soon. She is out with a little medical issue. But I think this really speaks volumes about your Human Service Department. I think they're doing a terrific job. They pay attention to a lot of detail. They're getting the revenues that we need to operate that system, and I think it's just worthy of mentioning. I think it's a real good effort on their part. To continue, highway tracking in the 5-year capital plan has been covered very effectively. The land management and the diversions meeting I attended, I think you also have covered those very well, and maybe the one other thing was the progression in the Oxbow, Hickson, Baki area with construction. There's, can't remember how many homes they said were under construction right now, and of course they will continue expending the dollars for those. They also decided that, I think there was a motion to this effect at the full authority board meeting. I know the intentions were that we do have one hardship case in the state of Minnesota, and they just feel that it's proper to continue the appraisal and the buyout of that property if that so desires. So that was also decided in this extended discussion, reference budgets and things. Another meeting I had was with Public Health and the supervisor, the director over at Detox Center. You had approved some additional personnel hours over there, and I think they've done a very good job of expanding that. I had some concerns for a while there, and they have really stepped to the plate and done some good recruiting, and it's really worked out well. Tim Magnuson and I had a meeting reference the parking with to discuss some options there and future planning. On Wednesday afternoon, we had, I'll say, sponsored a workshop in regards to employee complaints and workplace bullying. Now, this was a collaborative that we worked with. This is a program that Darren and I had seen down last fall at one of our conferences. We saw that it was going to be given in Little Falls. I contacted AMC and said, hey, how about bringing that out to this part of the state so we don't have to spend so much mileage in transportation and different things. We collaborated with the city of Moorhead, and we had 85 people attend that, I believe it was. 85, so it was really a good turnout, and they really liked that. And then the next morning, and Commissioner Mojo already reported on it, then we went into the Commissioner Department Head training, and that mostly dealt with personality, knowing yourself, knowing your co-workers, how you deal with them, how you react to their issues. And frankly, there were 17 reviews, and 9 of them were excellent, and the 8 were very good. And I think it was just, I could sense there was just a real good feeling around that room. Didn't you think so?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was well received.
I hope I got a C- out of it.
I've got yours on my desk, by the way, that she asked me not just to give it to you, but to review that with Commissioner Campbell.
Read it before. So now I really know how to work with you.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Commissioner Gross as well took that, and she wanted me to go over that with you, so we'll have to do that someday.
All right, we'll do it.
So,
I'll go through the torture.
just before I'm ready to run out the door. I'll keep the door open once I'm going, no. It was very good. As Commissioner Campbell talked about, we had an additional jail construction meeting to discuss the architect, and we'll bring that before you. We spent an hour and a half with this firm talking about what work had been done in the past, and we talked about price, and we feel we can do better on pricing because the county has made an investment in it, and also then there was a recommended addition to the committee at that point, and I'll bring that before you next meeting as well, because the board did approve the members, that 13-member committee on that. So if you're going to add one, I'd like to see it come back there. Yesterday, I don't know if it's going on today, down in the assessor's office, they have their open book, their evaluations, appeals, and they are being tasked with the ag land increases. And you and I've talked about that shift from the residential, and boy, the ag land properties are really seeing a valuation increase, and it's being reflected in their taxes. And right now, the assessor's office is feeling the brunt of that. So, and then Mr. Campbell mentioned the solid waste meeting that we've met. So that's my report, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and with that, there's a luncheon, volunteer luncheon at the Legion at 11:30. Barbecues over Family Service Center.
I do have one thing. I'm on the Felton Prairie. I know I'm an alternate, and so can you contact them to see if maybe we can meet before we make this decision? I think it'd be beneficial to kind of meet with them maybe.
With
The
DNR?
Felton Prairie Committee.
Oh, sure.
I mean, as we kind of look what will happen there, it'd be beneficial to meet with them, I think.
Okay.
Is there a difference between the county-owned property group and the Felton Prairie group, correct?
Yes, I'm on both.
So do you think it's wise to start with one and then go to the next, or?
Maybe for the Felton Prairie, it would be, since I'm a new commissioner on that, I think it would be beneficial for me to just meet with them, not even
have a meeting, but you just mean get connected with that?
Well, I think it would be important.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that'd be.
I don't know when the last time they met was.
It was just before Commissioner
Oh,
Everett
okay.
had left.
Okay,
I know that because they said that it had been quite a while since they
Oh.
had met.
okay.
Yeah.
But they were, and yeah, Frank was there, so.
Well then, whatever you think.
Well, I think we need to discuss how much we want to sell, whatever. I mean, we need to
But I
come to
mean,
something
but if you
with something
talk
to the board.
Felton, they're gonna give you their
But
perspective of what they.
Don't you think it's important to have both perspectives?
Sure,
though?
yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, with that, yes, go ahead, Wayne.
No, Brian, we have a building committee meeting right after.
Right after this.
Okay. And we'll be where in your office?
Yes.
Thank you.
And with that, we're adjourned.
Thanks.